Despite close polling and recent head-to-head matchups, President Trump could very well still win the election. And Senator Bernie Sanders, he's doubling down on his Medicare for All plan against Elizabeth Warren.
We are back with Andrew Feldman, Democratic strategist, and Tom Rogan, commentary writer for the Washington Examiner. So this piece in the New York Times, very interesting. They did their head-to-head matchups. And something I didn't realize that Nate Cohn, their analyst there, wrote is that polls at this point, these general election head-to-head polls, even though it feels like a long way out, are actually just as predictive of victory or defeat as the polls that are taken right before the election. So this is something to pay attention to. And basically, a lot of liberals, Tom, were stunned that the president is still in position to win because he has better support in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin than he does nationally. So he is once again positioned to be able to lose the popular vote and win the Electoral College.
Yeah, I think there are two factors here. One is that I think Democrats have misread the degree to which President Trump's support base and prospective support base, right, independents who might be minded to vote for him again, is factored in the same way in 2016. The crazy things the president says, or things that are really out, calling Beto O'Rourke a dog, etc. Right. People. That doesn't change people's views because they kind of know that's what he's about, and they've known it for a while. And then secondly, because of the strength of the economy, as a sustaining theme, that gives people a reason to think, well, Trump hasn't blown up the world as people said he would in 2016. The economy remains strong. Maybe we can tolerate the craziness. Right. So,
and on top of all that, of course, is the cultural issue. I mean, that's the main thing that I'm looking at here, Andrew, which is I look at this. Elizabeth Warren, 2 points behind Trump in every single one of these swing states. Exact same position of Hillary Clinton in 2016. Like you said, extraordinarily predictive. And what is interesting is the Times, of course, did not actually do crossover support between Biden and Sanders, but they did with Warren. There's a lot of data to dig into there. 3 out of 4 Biden supporters in these swing states would not vote for Elizabeth Warren or look at her distastefully. Now, the Times, of course, is trying to say because she's too far left on economic issues. But if you actually dig down into that, they talk about how these voters are culturally conservative on political correctness, on areas of immigration, on areas of social justice. And these are actually the issues where Warren has leaned the most into these cultural issues, which are the most at odds with most of these Midwestern states, which have to swing back to Trump, if they were to defeat Donald Trump in 2020. What do you think?
I think that there's a bit of sexism here still in the country, and not when you look at these in terms of is the country, especially in these states, ready to look to elect a woman president? I'm not sure this is about moving left or right. I think this is when you look at these numbers, I see, look, this is we're calling sexism on the face right here. But also at the same time, this polling is
Pete Buttigieg also didn't do well for what it's worth.
Look, it doesn't. That's fine. But Pete Buttigieg is not. Pete Buttigieg has other reasons if we want to call out issues in the society that is why he's not doing well and why that's okay. But I also think if you look at this, that this poll is not of likely voters. I need to point that out to people because this poll is of registered voters, completely different of the electorate that's going to turn out. And I think that it's early to look at these numbers, but at the same time, this is why we can't become complacent, and we need to go into the general election with a candidate that people are unified behind and excited about.
Well, and here's why I get sexism is real. Let's just put that out there. However, when you start talking about, and this was what was so counterproductive about the narrative after Hillary lost, the idea that she lost because of sexism means that the next time a woman steps up to run, everybody goes, well, we can't nominate her because we're not going to elect her. So it becomes very self-defeating. That's one thing. The other thing is, if you look at Elizabeth Warren and where her strongest support comes from today, it is mostly from the professional managerial class, affluent white liberals, which is exactly the demographic group that is very prominent, very important in the media, very prominent, very important in a Democratic primary. And they're the group that when we nominate the candidate who appeals most to them, we consistently end up losing. She's a wine track candidate. The way that she talks about big structural change and I've got a plan, I've consulted the experts, I have the white papers. Culturally, it does not connect. It comes off as lecturing, professorial, and condescending. And I think that's as big a problem for her as anything else, including her ideological positioning or her gender.
Yeah, I mean, but part of the problem for her is that is her identity now.
Yeah, right.
That she can't escape that because it would jeopardize her base. But,
Right.
to your point, she has to find a way to be more relatable to people. If she can talk about, trade, right? Trade is one of the issues that Pennsylvania still, for example, that generates outsized attention in terms of because of the industrial base there. If she can simplify, have the top, have the big, high and mighty professorial, narrative, and then sort of draw a line to a more simplistic, I don't mean sell it in a sort of way that people can, it's easy for people to understand, but just a more saleable campaign narrative that says to people.
You're totally right, Tom, which is that, here's the thing. There's actually not that much daylight between Trump and Elizabeth Warren on trade, save for like maybe environmental standards whenever it comes to negotiating trade deals. But the difference is that she's like, I'm going to have 62% of people on my board. And Trump is like, we used to build things in this country, and now we don't. Look, and everyone's like, oh, yeah. I mean,
here's what Democrats have to remember, and I'll take this from a friend and client of mine who always says that Democrats bring white papers and statistics to a knife fight. And that's what we can't do in this general election. We have to remember that we have to appeal to emotion. And both, when you look at the stories of Joe Biden from Scranton, when you look at the stories of Elizabeth Warren growing up in Oklahoma, when you look at the personal narrative of Bernie Sanders when he stood on that stage with Ilhan Omar and got personal, when we get personal, when we peel back the layers, I think we can win back voters. Here's one other point I need to make, is that Democrats in a presidential election have not won the white vote since LBJ signed the Civil Rights Act. We are not winning the white vote. So we better make sure that we turn out our base in record numbers. And that's what I think we need to do in these cities.
Fair, but are you going to lose the white vote by 30 points?
Right.
Or, I mean, the margins matter.
Correct, they do.
This tweet from Dave Wasserman I thought was really interesting, where he's talking about the number of eligible non-college white voters who didn't vote in 2016. His point being, there are a lot more, Tom, white non-college voters, Trump's strongest base, that could be turned out than there are college-educated white voters. There's a much larger pool that Trump could potentially draw from to win Michigan again, to win Wisconsin again, to win Pennsylvania again.
And Bernie or Joe Biden. Either of those people could easily draw.
Who have appeal at this group.
There's a lot to play for, but going back to your point, Saga, with the cultural conservatism of the country, and also the idea, and we talk about the midterm victory for Democrats, shifting those suburban women, right?
Yeah.
If the Democrats go too far to the left in a way that doesn't seem feasible, right, which is, I think, the Warren issue with Medicare for all, then there's the risk that people step back and say, well, what is this going to cost me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
See, I don't think it's the economics aren't the danger, and I talked about this in my monologue today. I think there are different types of left. I think the cultural issues are far trickier than the economic issues. This is a populist part of the country. I mean, health care for all is popular, and yes, it can be tricky to message on, et cetera. But if you're just like Bernie, who says Medicare for all, we're doing it, that actually has a lot of appeal. I don't think that's a wealth tax. Those things are popular, but it's about the presentation, it's about the emphasis. And I would also just point out, and then we have another topic we want to get to here on healthcare, that troubling also for Warren in these polls is she does worse with black voters and other non-white voters than Hillary Clinton did in 2016. And that is not a winning formula.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, to this point, we're talking about healthcare and about authenticity and about how all this stuff plays, which is that Bernie Sanders actually was going after Elizabeth Warren on the Medicare for All plan. Let's take a listen.
And because we are getting rid of the profiteering and the corruption in the healthcare industry, the drug companies and the insurance companies will be able to provide all of that to people at a fraction of the cost they are paying right now. Not here to tell you it's going to be free, you're going to have to pay something, but it's going to be a heck of a lot less than what you're currently paying.
Andrew, I cannot understand why Elizabeth Warren can't just say that. You're going to have to pay something, and it's going to be a heck of a lot less than what you're currently paying. Just say it. It's baffling that you construct this multi-page document of multi-tiered, insane taxes and immigration reform, which are never going to pass. And Bernie's just like, yeah, you're going to have a higher payroll tax, and everybody's going to have health care. I mean, people will understand that, right?
Look, I think shooting straight with the American people is the best way to go here. I do think, look, to be honest with you, I would love to pay more in taxes if I didn't have to pay what I'm paying in my premiums and deal with all the BS that I deal with my insurance companies.
Right.
And I'm someone that people would say, what are you talking about? Why would you support that? Because it's a racket. And I think that when Bernie, one of the things is Bernie Sanders is very authentic. And Joe Biden at times can be very authentic.
Yeah.
Authenticity here is going to be critical to winning back Trump voters, or as you say, moving folks from the white voters, moving some of them back, because guess what? Trump is extremely authentic and he says what he thinks, and we have to connect with people emotionally. If we don't do that, we will lose.
And I think that could be a very positive thing if we got to the general election with two candidates who articulated two very different ideals of healthcare, right? That from the Republican point of view, you say, okay, that Bernie Sanders, that makes a lot of sense. He's actually on the math that works. But then the Republican nominee, President Trump, would say, okay, well, what does it mean for access, for innovation, for quality of care, for drug development, etc.?
That's a fine debate.
So that is a proper debate. Let us have that. But I don't get I think Warren is going to have to shift. Otherwise, when Bernie keeps saying that, it just destroys her.
Well, here's the other
It's a real weakness because this is the top issue with voters.
It is the top issue with voters, but the other issue I have is that plan, whatever you think of it, wasn't easy to understand.
Yes.
Okay? And voters need to understand things easily and quickly. And I can't explain that plan to some average person, and I'm not a healthcare expert, but healthcare experts shouldn't have to explain how to pay for healthcare to the average individual, because peer-to-peer messaging works the best.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
That was great.
Tomorrow on Rising, journalist Zed Jelani. He breaks down all the latest gaffes in the policy plans from the 2020 candidates.
And astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's going to take us on a journey through the cosmos and answer all of our burning space questions. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss lots of interesting stuff. And also send us your questions. Use the hashtag RisingQs. Have a great day, everybody. We'll have election results for tomorrow, so tune in for that.
That's right. We'll see you guys tomorrow.